Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Nick, the current Caesar of this whole movie review thing, and you're watching Video Entertainment Talk. As an emperor, I have to be tough and fair. Therefore, I call a spade and be ready for some cold hard truth. Now some may say, why are you being so mean? Why are you being so negative like that? That's not the kind of people I want to mingle with. You wanna know why I decided to title this video the way I did? Cause I'm Caesar. And I can say and do whatever the hell I want. And I don't have to say or do anything anybody thinks I would have to say or do. Do you know what I'm saying? Did we get that? I got a sour throat, I can't scream anymore. Alright, I'm gonna throw in a good word here and there because there were things that were okay in this movie too. But I'm doing it so you don't think of me as a complete prick. And if you still do, I'll throw you to the lions in the arena. Then enjoy what happens next. Now without further ado, let's talk about what I personally didn't like in Gladiator 2.
This is a great Gladiator movie.
Not. Be advised, this video contains spoilers, so if you haven't watched the movie yet, Caesar accepts no complaints. The film stars Paul Mescal as the main character Lucious, Connie Nielsen, who was nice to see again as Lucilla, Pedro Pascal, who played General Gracchus, and perhaps the biggest surprise for me in this movie, my man Denzel Washington as Macrinus, who turned out to be the main bad guy. Writing credits for the movie go to David Scarpa, Peter Craig, and David Franzoni.
But what was bittersweet for me was that Ridley Scott returned as director to continue the story of the original Gladiator, a true classic that surpasses its successor in almost any way, although it was released 24 years ago.
Let's start with the main character. Lucious is Lucilla's son and he was just an 8-year-old boy in Gladiator 1. Because of his uncle Kamada's cruelty and power hunger, Lucilla was afraid that Kamadas would kill the boy, so there are no other male heirs to the throne. After all, he did have some experience with patricide after he killed his own father in the first film, when he learned he was going to make Maximus the next Caesar instead of him. After Kamadas' death, Lucilla perhaps feared some other prominent political figures who would take the child out of the picture or use his royal status to their advantage, especially with him being so young. But still, the main threat was dealt with, so sending him away after his uncle died makes less sense. Why didn't she at least try to make contact with her child for 16 years? And 16 years later, he's now a young adult known as Hanu, a skilled fighter and an honorable man who has a wife called Arishat, also good at combat. At the beginning of the movie, he defends the kingdom of Numidia from the invasion of the Roman army. During the battle, his wife dies and he's taken as a prisoner. When he's taken back to Rome, he becomes a gladiator and seeks to take revenge on General Marcus Acacius, who he thinks was responsible for the fall of Numidia and the death of his wife. This, however, is far from the truth, as General Acacius, a new partner to Lucilla, is actually a good man who's forced to impose war on behalf of the current twin brother co-emperors Gera and Caracalla, both depicted as incompetent, dumb, immature, and Caracalla not being far from full retard, especially with being hinted that he has been suffering from syphilis.
Hang his entrails from his city gates and crucify her! Crucify her! Take them away!
And I read that the real twin brother emperors were indeed rather stupid, had lust for power and death, but I felt the movie exaggerated this way too much, to the point you laugh at how pathetic they are. I don't know if a note of comedy was their intent here, but it was a strange result for me personally.
The gods have spoken!
I also want to talk about one of the main plot points and topics for discussion, the fact that Lucious is actually Maximus' son. First, let's just note that the audience knew this in advance. At least to my knowledge, most of the people I talked to said they also heard through the grapevine that Lucious is Maximus' son. The problem is, the main character didn't know it until halfway through the movie, so one of the main plot twists wasn't actually a surprise to us. What he knew is that he is indeed the son of Lucilla and an heir to the throne, but never tried to take back his true identity in any way until he was forced to return to his homeland. I don't know, man, some say it was kind of implied in the first movie, but not really.
If you go back and watch it, the only thing that was made clear was that Lucilla and Max did have a relationship.
But with Maximus not being royalty, perhaps it was unfitting for them to be together or whatever the fuck.
And because I loved you.
A long time ago.
So Maximus found another wife and Lucilla married Lucius Verus, who was co-ruler. In the first movie, when they first talk, they both say they have their own child and that both children are about the same age.
And I hear you have a son.
Yes. Lucius. He'll be nearly 8 years old.
My son is also nearly 8.
So one of the options here would be for them to still have some sort of an affair while they were with their new partners, and our champ Maximus knocks up both Lucilla and his new wife at about the same time. This doesn't sound like the character we know, a man of honor, manners, duty and loyalty to his family and country. The other option would be for Lucilla to get pregnant while still secretly seeing Max, which means just weeks or a month later they would split up and Maximus would find his new wife and get her pregnant right away. This sounds kind of off too, even with Lucilla's new husband being gay according to her in the second movie. The other scene from the first film that would take me further away from this whole concept was again a conversation between Lucilla and Max when he was later chained and closed in a dungeon when Camadas learned who he is. The two of them argue and Lucilla asks him if her son needs to die too in order for him to believe her good intentions.
My son was innocent.
So is mine. Must my son die too before you'll trust me?
Not a word about Lucius being related to our favorite gladiator in any way. So, was this all plausible? Not. What was kind of silly is that later, when his mother learns who Hanno really is and talks to him, he tries denying his true identity and is very hostile to her. Of course, it was because he's been angry at her for sending him away years ago. But I mean, come on, she did it to protect him after all. How angry can you be at your parents for doing the best they can to save your life?
Lucius, you were loved. By myself and by your father. Your name was on his lips.
The dumber thing is, 30 minutes screen time later, he's forgiven her, saying he doesn't want to lose her again now when he's found her, and says he's going to take down the deranged management of Rome to restore its glory and all that shit.
The problem is, his transformation happens kind of fast and just feels unnatural and contradicting.
Let's talk about Paul Mescal's performance in the film, cause there's no avoiding comparing him to a prime Russell Crowe. Paul is a good actor and a great humble guy, and I don't know if the writers and the director are partly to blame for this, but he did look kind of stiff, not going much beyond being a badass tough guy, taking a lot of damage but still being able to go on and constantly leaning on his rage and quest for revenge. He also never stopped exhibiting typical masculinity of a top-notch fighter and hero. This is characteristic of Dominic Toretto from Fast and Furious, but should it be for a Gladiator sequel where some more character complexity is expected? I don't know. There wasn't much character development except for him taking back his real identity, as we all knew he would, and killing the ultimate villain. And speaking of the ultimate villain, this was also one of the bittersweet aspects for me in Gladiator 2. He turned out to be none other than my man Denzel Washington's character Macrinus. He was a black businessman, arms dealer, and very good at making gladiators, finding and nurturing the best talent. What was good about the character was that initially he kind of supports Lucius, he doesn't seem like the big villain. That was until it turns out he has his own ambitions and wants to first get in the Emperor's ear and become their trusted advisor, then manipulate them and concoct a plan how to take them out one by one in the right time. Given that they were morons, he ultimately succeeded, and in the final act of the movie he becomes Emperor. character. The other double-edged sword was making Denzel speak with an American street accent and act as if it's Alonzo Harris from Training Day we're watching, not Macrinus from Gladiator 2. So it was awesome to witness Denzel do his thing, but was this direction the right one for a film centered around ancient Rome? Not. To make his end kind of stupid, the writers decided it would be nice to get him into a one-on-one combat with Lucious, with both characters' armies standing behind each of them. The army that was loyal to Gracchus arrived just at the nick of time to blindly support someone who was said to be Lucius, son of Maximus. Obviously. So why, oh why wouldn't Macrinus just stay behind the Praetorian army to see if it would prevail or not, or try to weasel his way out of the situation somehow? How? Why would he, who was supposed to be a puppet master pulling strings in the shadows, decide to engage in a deadly fight with one of the best warriors of his time? Another good question. Although the real Macrinus was never a gladiator, Denzel's character was a former one, but he was way past his prime. Despite that, it seemed he almost had the better of Lucius, which also seemed unreasonable. Another thing I kind of didn't like was what they did to Senator Gracchus, who was also in the first Gladiator. As one of the notable characters who were supporting the former Emperor Marcus Aurelius and then secretly aiding his daughter Lucilla for many years in her rebellious plans, I think they could have done more with him. He was never meant to have a lot of screen time, I get that, but it felt like it was way too little. He was neglected and met his death in the end during the onslaught in the Colosseum. Now let's discuss the fighting scenes and visual effects of Gladiator 2. I did like some of the fighting choreography for this production, and in those parts there was good balance between technique and chaotic brawl. Perhaps the best fight scene was between Lucius and Gracchus, where we know Gracchus was trying to avoid really hurting Lucius and make him see reason. This was, in my opinion, the best scene of the whole movie because it was nicely shot, had nice fighting moves, plus it was the most emotional one with Gracchus' sacrifice. And I just wanna note that Pedro Pascal was great here. But what about the worst fight scenes and creative VFX decisions? Well, how about those cartoon-like demon monkeys in the first Colosseum fight? Why would you put creatures like that as an adversary to the gladiators? It was even more sad to see Lucius squaring up against one of them and screaming at it the same way the monkey screamed at him, and even biting the arm of the monkey. As if that wasn't enough for my despair, there was even a worse scene when they filled the arena with water to have a sea battle with big balls and shit. I did later learn that flooding the arena with water was a thing back then, which was a shocking fact, but the liberties they took with this were plain stupidity. I mean, they made it look as the water is really deep, which of course wasn't possible, and what do you know? They added some bloodthirsty sharks in there to spice things up. Other than that, I didn't see any bad VFX, at least in my eyes. But that was still plenty anyway.
So there you have it. Those were my 2 cents about the new Gladiator movie. Overall, it tried to fill some big shoes and it failed to do so character-wise and story-wise. If you have a positive opinion about my negative video, you can subscribe to the VET Empire. And in exchange, I promise you glorious battles the next time you visit the arena. I have now spoken. Yours truly, Caesar Nick. Take care. Are we good? Fuck this fucking dress that